Laakhon, or in English, One in a Million, is an Indian web series that as of now has 2 seasons, which you can find on Amazon Prime. Each season features its own story, which explores a relevant social issue in India through the perspective of a protagonist who seeks to make a change for the better. With Season 1 being 6 episodes, Season 2 being 8 episodes, and the average length of each episode being around half an hour, it's extremely easy to binge and never feels drawn out or slow. For this review, I will be briefly going over the show as a whole before doing a mini review for each season, all of which will be spoiler-free. During an interview with Indian Express Online, show creator Biswa Kalyan Rath describes the overall theme for both seasons as being the story of an ordinary person fighting against extraordinary odds, with a simple but important message to its viewers being that you should be the change that you want to see in society. Season 1 follows the story of Akash Gupta, a boy who is sent to an IT coaching institute by his parents, who push him to become successful and support the family. However, this is not the path that Akash wants for himself, and he struggles to fit in at his new school and with his studies, which has nothing to do with his own interests and ambitions. Season 2 follows Dr. Shreya, a doctor from the city who receives a posting in the small rural Sitlapur village where she must organize and run a cataract camp. However, she faces resistance from the villagers who are untrusting of government healthcare. The aim of Laakhon is to show that ordinary or small people can still be heroes. They can fight injustice in their own ways and on their own terms. This creates a more realistic experience for anyone watching the show because the protagonists are just like any other person. They have their own flaws and limitations and make mistakes along the way, but ultimately they are still able to navigate and overcome the adversity that each of their positions in society and its institutions throws their way. With the IIT schools of India in the first season and the government healthcare system in the second, each season identifies and comments on a different social injustice within these institutions, using the protagonist as a first-hand witness to these problems. Despite its emphasis on social issues, Laakhon never feels like it's sacrificing its entertainment value or the effectiveness of its storytelling. Its commentary never feels preachy, but instead only adds to its immersiveness through the development of cultural intrigue. It makes the issues at hand feel relatable and relevant through its protagonists, as the audience experiences adversity right along with them. Both Akash and Dr. Shreya are really easy to root for. They are well-developed characters who show growth and progress as individuals throughout each of their respective story arcs. The show will have you cheering for both of these heroes along the way, getting outraged at all the corruption that becomes exposed, and just generally getting all emotional and shit. It's heartwarming, heartbreaking, entertaining, and informative all at once. The cinematography is solid, the acting is great, and the soundtrack is fantastic as well. And yes, you will have to read subtitles for most of the show, but as the great Bong Joon-ho once said, once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films. In this case, series. Just to clarify, there is some English spoken in each season, as characters will often throw in some English along with their Hindi. Alright, so now that you know the basics, let's get a little more in-depth on each season. For this season, besides the main theme of the show overall, there is also a theme of family and expectation. In one of my English classes last semester, we read the book God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, which, by the way, I would recommend to anyone interested not only in Indian literature, but also just finding a good book in general. It's a beautifully written book about some pretty heavy stuff involving family and trauma and society. The reason I bring it up is because I found a sort of thematic parallel between this book and Laakhon. In God of Small Things, one of the major themes is the connection and relationship between the small and the big things in life, the personal, intimate details of relationships between individual people, and the larger positioning of people within their society and culture and nation. Akash's relationship with his parents is a great example of this dynamic. Akash struggles with the constant pressure and expectations from both his parents and the school, Genius and infinity. If the school represents the big, an educational system, a space where he is only one placed alongside many, and his relationship with his parents is the small, his personal life where many people in his family are placing their hopes on him, a single person, then there is an inverse within these two forms of pressure and expectation. Each of these two forms, the big and the small, are related, as his parents' expectations come from not only the immediate need to support them all through his hopeful success, but also to garner a reputation as a hometown hero and a success in the eyes of society. And then there's Genius Infinity, which is an institution that profits off of the small, the hopes and ambitions of families who seek to gain an edge in climbing the social ladder through their children. The conflict between what Akash wants for himself and what his parents expect of him is apparent right from the beginning of the season, and as it continues, its effect on Akash is shown and developed really well. You really feel bad for this kid, who has to somehow carry the weight of his entire family's hopes and dreams on his shoulders, while his own are pushed to the side. On a lighter note, one of the other aspects of this season that made it so great was the friendship between Akash and his buddies at school. The actors who play his two friends, Chundale and Bakri, give amazing performances. All three of these characters have so much charisma and are really funny together. Their friendship seems so real and genuine. The tone in this season begins as relatively funny and lighthearted, but gradually transitions into becoming more serious and powerful. This transition runs parallel to Akash's struggles with expectations and pressure, as they slowly become more and more present. As an American and a casual viewer, I know little to nothing about the realities of IIT school in India. Even so, I know that the show has based a lot of the story off real situations. And even just learning a little bit about it, even to be made aware of this corruption within this educational system in India, is extremely relevant and relatable to, for example, our own education system here in America, which has, believe me, its own set of problems as well. There are other political and cultural issues raised in this season as well, such as references to the caste system and conformity, but I don't want to give everything away, so be prepared for a wild ride here. It's going to play with all of your emotions, and it's just overall really entertaining, enjoyable, and thought-provoking. The last thing I'll mention is that there's one scene in particular where Akash has dinner with his parents later on in the season that is just one of the most powerful and emotional scenes I've watched in a long time. And I'll just leave you with that. I don't have a favorite out of each of these two seasons, but if I had to make an argument for season 1, I would use this scene as a point of reference. For the second season, the setup is fairly familiar. Outsider comes to small town and shakes things up. Dr. Shreya is the big city doctor who is dismayed that she must take this posting in a small rural village when she has far bigger things planned for her career. Despite this premise being one that's been used many times before, it is still done really well and used effectively. Shweta Tripathi gives a great performance in the leading role, and all of the characters around her do their part with a couple notable standouts. This season has a lot to do with empathy and learning to put yourself in the shoes of others, of making the effort to better understand those you may have preconceptions of. Dr. Shreya must learn to understand the villagers and their perspective, and in turn they come to understand her, and perhaps learn to see her as separate from the government healthcare system she initially represents to them. Just as in the first season, this season highlights another social issue, the government healthcare system, and how its corruption can cause hardship for not only the people, but the doctors trying to help the people as well. One of the central dynamics in this season is the relationship between doctors and the patients, and how although it would seem that they would be at odds at times, it is in fact the government and the healthcare system both of these two sides are a part of that has failed them. I just want to add that much like the IIT coaching centers, I know next to nothing about the cataract camps in India and what this subject matter really reflects in real life. Maybe one of you who lives in India or is knowledgeable about this subject can drop a comment and share your thoughts. I'd definitely appreciate it. Anyways, the reason I bring this up is because although I do not know the actual background for this topic in the show, looking at it as a purely thematic element within the narrative, it serves as a nice metaphor. Dr. Shreya is sent to this village to run a cataract camp, literally making it possible for people to see better or more clearly, just as her eyes are metaphorically opened by the way of life in the small village and the struggle of the people to get sufficient health care. It can also be related to the show's intention to open the audience's eyes to the corruption and injustice that exists within the system. It's a really entertaining story, emotional and powerful just like the first season, and the build up to its conclusion and the ending are all done really well and leave you with a lot to think about and a lot of mixed feelings, which was definitely intentional by the show's writers. It comes down to a matter of making tough decisions based on what you think is right and staying true to your own beliefs and principles. There is a moment in this season where one of the characters gives a pretty powerful quote that I just feel sums up this whole season really well. The politicians own the suppliers own the doctors, and the patients own nothing. Also, just as a side note, the montage sequences in this season are really well done. Just wanted to add that in so you can keep an eye out for it. Alright, so in conclusion, this series is really well made, entertaining, and comes with a message for all its viewers. Sometimes being a hero doesn't mean doing something superhuman. Sometimes it just means making the decision to stand up and take action in a situation where most others would do nothing. Making this decision and making a change isn't always rewarding or validating on a surface level, and perhaps you may not even be looked at as a hero to some. But it's the ability to choose to do what you think is right despite what other people may think of you or how you might be seen that makes these stories of these two protagonists one in a million. Or, I guess, 2 in a million. Alright, that's going to do it for this review. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Also, be sure to go check out some of my other videos if you're looking for something new to watch. Hopefully you can find something that interests you. This is TwoTenEast, and I will see you on the next video, hopefully. Please come back. I use this as my only source of validation in life.